But it's fun. I love doing human sexuality because no holds barred. It's really, really, I just do a little different speech. I do my main speech, but then I can talk all about my sex change, about body parts, about sex, about the whole 9 yards.
Did you have to clear it with like the teacher or anything, or are they cool?
It's just, before I go in there, I say, just so you know, and I ask them, what can I talk about? They say anything. They're all adults, you know, except we're bringing a child in.
I'm not child.
A mental child. It's just getting the message out there. We're trying to train people to become trannies. Convert them.
You're too famous for this.
I know. Tomorrow. Look at this. This is a bitch in school. What is going on here? They have a university library too.
They have to have a fucking library for us.
They have a university union, the whole 9 yards. Right?
No, look. Education and integrative studies. And then this one's letters, arts, and social sciences.
Okay, hold on. I'll call you back a little bit.
We have Jessica Lynn here with us today. She's going to share her story. She has informed me that you can be candid in the questions that you ask, and she will be candid in her responses. She asked me, is there a line? And it's like, no, they're graduate students and you're being trained to be psychologists. So we're going to let her sort of share with us in the way that she feels most comfortable, and we are just absolutely pleased. And if you'll introduce your guests.
My name is Jessica Lynn. I am 50 years old. I am a woman and I used to be a man. I've had a sex change 5 years ago. And this just gives you a chance. How many people here know transgender people? It's very, very few. And I'm here to say you can ask me any goddamn question you like. And I am not shy of anything. So my story begins, like I said, I'm 50 years old. I was born in 1965. And during that period, nobody had ever heard of the word transsexual, transgender, transvestite. There was no such thing. I thought I was the only person on the planet, even at that young of an age, going, why do I want to be a member of the opposite sex? No, I'm not going to say at 3 years old, but 5, going into 6 years old. I wanted to be like my very best friend, Michelle Gorman. I wanted to look like her, act like her, play like her, be her. It was a very, very torturous part of my life because I did not know what was wrong with me. I mean, it just didn't seem normal, you know? I would just pray to God morning, noon, and night, make me a girl, make me a girl. Just take these fucking awful goddamn feelings away from me. Why do I want to be a member of the opposite sex? It was just non-stop gnawing at me 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It was a torturous little life, you know, but you can't explain it. I never came out to my mom, my dad. I just kept it hidden. This is a beautiful school. We used to ride our skateboards and bicycles down this hill because it was a steep hill for a fucking 7-year-old little kid. We used to have palm trees like this over here. And when we were little kids, my brother was doing circles on his tricycle on top of the garage and he had a parachute on his back. And my mom caught him. We used to have a tree that grew right up in the middle. We used to climb up on the roof. It grew up and there was an olive tree. We used to climb up onto the roof here. I mean, they weren't bad parents, at the least, but I just never felt close enough at that age to be able to open up to them. So I just kept myself shut down and in a box, or in the closet, as you might say. When I learned the difference between boys and girls, about 7 or 8 years old, I actually took a razor blade to my penis and tried to cut it off. It's kind of common in the transgender world. I've heard of people, I was talking to a girl about 3 days ago that tried to twist it off when she was a kid, tried different things to mangle it, to get rid of it. You hate that piece on you that identifies you as a male figure. I didn't go deep enough into it, okay, if that makes sense. I tried to cut it off. I tried every little way I could to get it off. I remember holding my brother's shotgun to it, saying, I'm going to pretend it was an accident. And I remember holding my brother's shotgun to my penis and thinking of a way to make it sound like it was accidentally blown off. I have to be a girl now, you know? I mean, but these are coming from a 7-year-old mind saying, how do I get rid of it? I remember riding bicycles saying, oh, I'm going to get it, but I lost my penis by a bicycle accident. I tried things to do that so I'd lose it, it would come off. And when I tried to cut it off, they never knew. It bled, and I remember bleeding that night, but I didn't go, cutting your penis off with a razor blade as a 7-year-old boy, I didn't get too far, if that makes sense, you know? And
so they didn't know at the time?
No. You have no idea. Again, being this age, being in a time, nowadays you can come out, there's stuff on the internet, there's MTV shows it, but when I was a kid, you saw a guy on television in a dress, everybody's pointing at him and laughing at him, you know, so why the hell do I want to come out to somebody at that age? So what I did was I would focus my mind onto activities, all right? I started stamp collecting at a very young age, and I'd come home from school and I'd start collecting my stamps and just focus on that. Then it was bug collecting. Okay, I'm going to go search for bugs, whatever it was. Then it was artwork. Then it was photography. I had a black room in my parents' bathroom. You know what I mean? I turned the whole bathroom into, I had an opaque projector and the whole 9 yards. Then it turned into oil painting. So I would concentrate on oil painting, and that became my next obsession. I did this painting at 11 years old in one 6-hour sitting. That tells you the obsession that it was. This painting was about 10 feet. I did this over several times. It's never been accomplished. It's on a piece of masonite. It's about that big. I have a lot of paintings. These won awards. You know, this is coming from a 10, 11, 12-year-old little boy that was trying to escape, and that's so I'd focus on things. And you see this a lot in the LGBT community, you know, and it's a way to escape. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember. I blocked out a lot of my childhood. I did it purposely. I remember I don't know right now. I may have to come back to that one. I'll have to think about that one.
Yeah, we'll think about it.
You know, I had a loving family, if that makes sense. I had 2 parents that cared about me, and I remember at a very young age thinking about suicide and thinking how badly it would hurt them if I did die, and that I think is one of the other reasons why it kept me alive for so many years, is I didn't want to hurt the people around me. And I do believe suicide to a certain extent can be selfish, but I think to a certain extent it's some people's only way out. And so I don't think it's selfish, but at the time I think that was my only way of ever dealing with it. You know, I didn't want to hurt my mom and dad and my brothers, because if I killed myself, they would be in a lot of pain. So I don't remember a lot of my growing up, and I don't really remember much about goals of what I was going to do. You know, I just got through day by day by day. My parents were English immigrants. All right, so they came in from England. My sister was actually born there too. And I was introduced to soccer at a very young age. So yeah, I didn't really care for playing sports, but I started playing with my brothers and stuff, and it became my next obsession. I played so many soccer games on this field. My hottest game ever, it was about 114 degrees. We played a soccer game and we went into double overtime on a Saturday afternoon. Couldn't breathe. And my team was Winnipeg United. We used to play here numerous times. And I played in a one youth thing here, and I got most outstanding player. And I remember being on the field over here when United States when we found out the United States beat Russia in the Olympic Games in the hockey. And I remember standing right over there and how exciting that was, because we were on a soccer game that day. This is a beautiful school. It really is. I had so many memories here. I didn't want to be a tough man. I didn't want to be anything like that. But I hung around them. And I think a little bit of it to do, looking back at it now, is so that I wouldn't get picked on. Okay, I'm hanging around the tough, strong boys, and then that way I'm not going to get picked on and made fun of. We lived on a big acre in the San Fernando Valley. We had a big garage door, and I'd get up real early in the morning and kick the ball with my left foot upon for about 2 hours before I go to school, so I could just practice and practice to become good. And again, it was an obsession, a way for me to escape. When I'm playing ball, my mind is in this concentration of, I want to be a member of the opposite sex, because it was eating me alive. Puberty now, you're going up in this, and it's starting to hit you more. I want to date boys, but you can't. That was the last thing I was ever going to come out on. So I became obsessed with soccer. I played 7 days a week, and I became really good. And when I was 15 years old, I started playing on a team that was under 19 years old. Here I am at 15 years old, 16 years old, right here, playing. The rest of the teammates are 19, 18, and 19. It was an under 19-year-old team. We were rated number 2 in the nation. I walked off a field up in Sacramento once, and I had 4 scholarship offers. I was asked to try out for the U.S. Olympic team for the 1984 Olympic Games, and I had a professional scholarship, a professional soccer career offered to me for a team called Los Angeles Skyhawks down in around this time. I miss playing soccer. I miss the field. I miss just seeing the people playing together. This was one of my biggest, greatest escapes, playing ball. And it is a brilliant sport. It really is. It's a team sport. You can't do it on your own. You know, like the old saying, there's no I in team. You know, there's me. I mean, I still played. I went a little bit with the Olympic thing. It was very political. And my next obsession to escape became alcohol. Okay, that became my next thing. Here I am, 15. These players are all 18, 19 years old. 18, 19-year-olds in the early 80s can get alcohol. We used to go to a store called Mama Rita's, and then here's the $6, whatever, get me a 6-pack, and then sneaking out the back door for you. So we had no problem getting alcohol. When you're hanging around older boys, you know, you start drinking, and again, it became a huge scapegoat. So at 13, 14, I was introduced to alcohol. I really didn't touch drugs at the time, but alcohol became my next way. Still played soccer, had the scholarship offers, but then I was starting to drink more and more and more. You know, and still had no idea what the word transsexual was, but I was starting to realize, hey, maybe I'm not the only one. Maybe there are a couple more people out in the world that have the same issue, if that makes sense. I didn't know anything about the surgeries. I had no clue in the world that you could do that at that time. So, but yeah, I think one of my secret, ultimate fantasy, what I planned on doing with my life is one day just disappearing and coming out, going on a boat across to England, on a boat across to Australia, and landing there, and have transition during that boat ride or whatever, and it's a fantasy, but it's kind of like what my dream was. So when you're 15, 16, 17 years old and you're a boy and you're hanging around a bunch of guys, you got a lot of peer pressure to start dating girls, and you have friends saying, hey, that girl likes you over there, and start dating, and you start doing it, okay, because you do anything you can to feel normal. And I also enjoyed hanging around girls. I could let's go shopping with the girls, and they would buy heels and buy skirts and whatever, buy dresses and buy blouses. And I felt fun doing it. Let's go shopping. But you can't do that with the soccer players and say, hey, let's go look at pumps. That ain't gonna work. So I started dating, and when I was 17 years old, I met a girl. Her name was Barbara. Barbara was 15 years old, and she was the most kindest, loving, adorable girl I had ever met in my entire life. Very, very sweet. Just a really good soul, and we started a relationship. And she was like my very closest, very, very best friend. I could tell her anything, and she was just totally cool about it, And I loved her. I loved her more than anything. She was, when I'd go shopping with her, I would be able to buy her clothing and buy her heels and her skirts and buy her blouses and buy her jewelry. She loved gold. She was a Hispanic girl. She loved gold. And I would buy her things that I thought, God, I wish a guy would buy me, if that kind of makes sense. I had that fantasy. I used to live my fantasy through her, very, very much into it. Okay, now here you're talking a little bit about human sexuality. When boys are 14, 15, 16, the wind blows, your dick gets hard. Okay? It's the truth. I mean, same thing with, a dog walks by and you're, and that's what you are. Here I was, Barbara was a very, very pretty girl, and here I am, a 17-year-old boy, only sleeping with her about once a month, once every 3 to 4 weeks. I didn't care to sleep with a girl, okay? It wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't have sex. She's 15 years old, 1982. She's not going to come out to her friends and say, yeah, I'm sleeping with Jeff. So she doesn't know that if that's normal or not. Sex wasn't on TV the way it is now. She just thought, okay, I'm having sex with my boyfriend and that's it, And so she just accepted me. She loved me. She was good. She was my very, very closest friend you can imagine. I tell her everything. And about 6 or 7 months, maybe 8 months into our relationship, we were lying in bed one night. I was drunk. And I finally had the balls to tell her. I said, I want to spend my time with her. I have to tell her my true feelings. And I remember rolling over to her and saying, I want to be a girl. So you can imagine what? Can you imagine your boyfriend, you lost your virginity to at 15 years old, turns to you and says, I want to be a girl. I mean, if I had a boyfriend right now and he came and said, I want to be a girl, he'd be out the door so fucking quick. I'm shallow, okay? But I waited a lifetime for it. So I left. And she was crying, I was crying. I'm going, did I just make the biggest mistake in my life? But I figured at 17 years old, I had to be truthful. We were talking about spending our life together. I had to come out and be truthful. And that's the way I was. So leaving the house and just in tears going, did I do the right thing? And I was so distraught. I had no idea, but I had to be truthful. I remember the next day just going, did I make the biggest mistake? I don't know. I was 17 years old. I'm in a relationship with a girl. I wanted to be a girl. And as I'm getting older, these feelings are becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. They're not going away. And then that next evening, early evening, she called me. She said, hey, Jeff, we got to talk. And I remember going to her house, going up the stairs, and she opened the door and hugged me. And she says, I love you more than anything. I plan on spending the rest of my life with you. I don't know anything about this. I don't know if it's transvestite, transsexual. I don't think she used the word transsexual because I'd never heard of the word transsexual. Transvestite, crossdresser, I have no idea, Jeff. But I love you and we'll figure it out. And she's let me dress a little bit, So I was happy, you know. To me, it was the very, very, very best thing I could have done. You know, I was open with her, and that's the very, very best thing I could have had, and, you know, that I could have done at the time. This is 1982, remember? So, Christmas Day of 1984, I proposed to her, and I asked her to marry me, and she said yes, because she cried yes, you know. And I proposed to her the way I would love to be proposed to, you know, and she cried yes. And so the year's now 1985, and we're starting to plan our lives together. You know, and my next obsession became work. I became a workaholic, okay? So it was another way to do it. I would work, I had a girlfriend. It was the best I could do to way to escape. I bought a big monster truck, okay? And you know the facade, right? But it wasn't small. But this truck was about up to here on my thing. I had 44-inch tires, I had triple double shocks, had a roll bar, had a good girlfriend, a pretty girlfriend. You know, I was the envy of every guy in San Fernando Valley with a small penis. I mean, seriously, you think about it, you know? So we went through some tough times at the end of towards August of 1985. We actually split up for a week because of my wanting to be what I was, and we got back together and we started planning our lives together. She was going to be my wife, the very, very best I could do. I loved to be with her. She accepted me, and I just figured this is the very, very best that I could do. And I figured this, you know, and I did love her. You know, she was my very, very closest friend. It was December 5th, 1985, and she called me. It was a beautiful sunny day like this, and she called me. She says, "Hey Jeff, I got off work early. Come pick me up." It was around noon, 12 o'clock, and I go in my four-wheel drive truck and I pick her up from work, and we stop by a couple places and we go and have lunch at a place in the San Fernando Valley on Reseda and Roscoe Boulevard. And we left there. And I remember it being right before Christmas, and we were planning Christmas shopping trip that evening, and we were going northbound on Winnetka, and like I said, it was a beautiful sunny day, just like it is out there today. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're coming through a green light, and a lady that was high on heroin, amphetamines, drunk, and barbiturates, whatever they were. She was in a 1972 Cadillac, ran a red light at 65 miles an hour and broadsided us right underneath Barbara's passenger door right here. We rolled 2 times, and a moving truck, an 18-wheel big rig moving truck, hit us head on head. We rolled another 5 times, and we landed upside down. And they landed a helicopter to take both of us to the hospital. And during that helicopter flight, I died several times, and they brought me back to life. I had broken my jaw. My jaw was destroyed. I had broken my neck. I had some brain hemorrhaging, and I was in critical condition. And then I was in a coma for about 5 days, and I woke up out of a coma, and my parents are standing over me crying, and I remember saying, "What's going on? Where's Barbara?" And they told me, "Barbara, your fiance hadn't making it." They ended up pulling the plug on her 2 days later. The accident was a Thursday, and they pulled the plug on her on early Saturday morning. Her brain was a scrambled mess, and so my life went into a complete, as you can imagine, turmoil and absolute chaotic, because she was the closest person to me, my very best friend, yeah, my girlfriend, the only person in the world that I ever trusted with my deepest, darkest secret, and she was dead now. And I went through huge amount of alcohol and drug abuse, huge amount, incredible amount. I would party for 48 hours straight, high on cocaine. I attempted suicide numerous times. I just hated being alive. And that went on for about 1.5 years. And I remember holding a shotgun in my mouth, and and remember the saying that if you commit suicide, you'll never be in heaven or whatever. And I pulled the gun out of my mouth because I didn't want to take that chance. Okay, because so there was still a little bit of thing that kept me alive, but I remember holding a gun in my mouth and just crying and crying and crying. It was absolutely torturous, and I came out of it. But now, like I said, I haven't prayed to God in years and years, and now I don't believe in God. If you want to call that agnostic, I don't know what's out there. I became very involved with the Unitarian Church, which is more an agnostic type belief, Buddhist, if you want to look at it that way. And that's more of what I believe in. You know, there's no God up there, and I don't believe in the Bible or that Jesus is or baby Jesus. Or there is a baby Jesus. That's not my cup of tea, you know. I just believe you got to be the very, very best person you can, and I believe, you know, that I will do the very, very best I can and help as many people as I can. If the car accident never happened, I think personally now, I think I would have transitioned a lot earlier. The drive at the time was becoming so intense. I had somebody that I had shared it with. I think me and Barbara would have become good friends, and I think I would have transitioned at 22-ish years old. I think 21-ish, 22, because I was very close to being 21. But the feelings were getting so intense at that time. Even being in a relationship with a beautiful girl, it wasn't my cup of tea. Did not want to be. I wanted to be somebody of the opposite sex. I think I would have transitioned at a very much younger age. I don't know. That was it. That was I didn't need to hide anymore, to numb down these feelings. I didn't need to do it anymore. And it was just one day I said, I don't want to be drunk anymore. I don't want to ever touch another sip of alcohol. And it became my next obsession was I want to stay sober. And no matter what it takes, I am going to clean up. And I'm never going to go back to alcohol. And I never did. I never took another sip of cocaine. I never even sipped another alcohol at any kind of drink. The closest I've gotten to was kissing a guy with, that's been drinking a beer, and that was about as much as I've ever gotten. When I came out to my parents, we had done a little research when I came out to my parents. And there was not a lot of trans doctors out there. There was something in the Central Valley called Tri-S, and that was more of a cross-dressing group, okay? And I went to one of their meetings, and it was a bunch of old men in dresses, and it wasn't what I wanted to be, okay? And it kind of turned me away, and it kind of just made me, is this all I have to look forward to? And it kind of creeped me out. So there was, and again, the only stuff you really ever saw was the back of dirty magazines, where you saw trans girls or chicks with dicks or whatever. And that's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a woman, I kind of wanted just to have a surgery and blend into society as a woman. I wasn't lucky enough to be that gorgeous, but, that was my fantasy. So when I started looking for, and we started researching, and we found everything where I can get estrogen from and learning a little bit about it. But again, it was before the internet was out, and there was not a lot of stuff out there.
Were you telling friends at this point when you were in your late 20s?
I didn't have a lot of friends that I was hanging around. During this period, I was up in Northern California, Central California, and I would come down and spend some time with family and Barbara's sisters, and that's who my friends were. I had my friend Jeff Shoemaker, and I didn't have a lot of friends at this time. I didn't care to hang around people. I was also sober now, and all my friends that I would hang around before were all drinking. So it was never an inclination to come out to them. I think one of my fantasies still at the time was, and even with my parents' thing, was I was going to disappear off the planet and go transition somewhere else. I was going to transition at my parents' house and then move somewhere else, find a different place to live. If that, I was going to go, just like that fantasy of mine when I was younger, is just to go somewhere else and live as a woman. And that was kind of the goal that I was reaching for at this point, and just leaving all my family and friends behind and going that route. And so, no, I had never come out to another person. My parents were the only ones that I'd come out to at that time, you know. In the years now, about 1989, the computer's coming out. You're finding out that there's more and more people like this. But back then, you would click on a picture, and it'd take you about 32 hours for it to download. You guys are all too young for that. But there was a few. So you type up transsexual, and there's maybe 100 things. Right now, you can type it in. There's probably 100 billion, you know, and you can see it instantaneously. But back then, but it was still information. We're finding out more about hormones, more about people transitioning. And I'm gleaning more and more to it. I'm out with my parents only, mind you. But I had decided to transition now, and we were debating about how to do it. Transitions, our surgeries are a costly thing. I didn't want just to transition, look like a girl, and still have a penis. I wanted the full surgery. And there's different values and different things, and I'm not dissecting that. That was me. I wanted a vagina. And a friend of mine's father died, and he said, will you come and remodel our house, for my mom, and that'll put about $20,000, $30,000 into my pocket so I can start transitioning. So I remember going into home base, and this girl behind the counter said, hey, Jeff. And I remember, it sounds kind of really weird and creepy, but I remember she was wearing black leggings, and I'm going, God, I like her pants. And I'm going, God, I wish I could wear pants like that. And we started talking. She knew me, and I knew her brother. And we started hanging out. And again, I enjoyed being around girls. And we started hanging out. We started doing things together. And we started dating, if that's what it was. But I remember at a very early on is, I'm not going to say that I came to her and said, hey, I want to be a girl, but I hinted, unbelievable hints. I said, oh, last year I went to a party dressed as a girl, and they want me to do it again, and they want to have pictures of me. And she goes, here, I'll help you. It was just weird things. It was like she enjoyed me being dressed, taking photographs of me, doing my makeup, me wanting, and I said, oh, I'd have to, and then I did different stories. And it was kind of lying, but it wasn't. It was a way to feed her information, to see her reaction to the way I wanted to be. And she was very accepting, and with Barbara, I think it was alcohol, a lot to do with it, and I think it was a confusing time, and I think a lot of it was, especially with Barbara, this will cure me, okay? And if I'm with a girl, maybe it'll cure me, and it'll straighten me up. I thought that a great deal, a lot. And with Rachel, I think she was the initiative one. She was the one, and I went along with it. I think that she was a very pushy, and and I just went along with it because, I was very soft and gullible in whatever I did. I wasn't very strong. I didn't have much of a backbone. So it was more of a friendship relationship. I mean, it was more, and I slept with her once in a while. That's really what it was. And what I remember too, it was very, very temporary. It was, I remember saying, I don't plan on being with this girl, because there was no plans with her. It was just a temporary hanging around, somebody to hang around while I'm on a construction job, and coming home from work at nighttime, going hanging out with somebody and going to do a little clothes shopping and having a bite to eat. And I didn't want to sit and watch TV, if that makes sense. And so I'm hanging around with a girl and doing that stuff. It didn't hold hands a great deal. It wasn't very affectionate. And that was it. It was more of a friendship relationship. And I remember planning on it just being done when the job was done and when I started my transition. I planned on it just being, okay, bye, and then she got pregnant. And I remember when she got pregnant, I was absolutely floored. See, another thing is, at the time, the doctors, a year after my car accident, it was about a year after my car accident, I woke up one morning and I couldn't pretty much pull my head out of bed. I had such an incredible pain coming from my testicles. I was in the most absolute sharpest pain you can ever imagine. And my brother came, picked me up and took me to hospital. We went to a hospital. There was one of two things, and one of them was a bad catheter. That during my car accident, they put in the catheter, and they said it's very, very common that you get this infection. And the doctor right then and there said, "You'll never be a father." Okay, he goes, "Your testicles are destroyed. You'll never be a father." And I said I never had planned on one. I would be a mom, but that's what he said right then and there. So during the period that I slept with girls, I never used a condom, and because I just figured, okay, I'm not going to be, I didn't care too much about HIV. I didn't care about anything, and then Rachel ended up pregnant, and I was completely dumbfounded. And I remember when she told me, and I said to her, "Whose is it?" And I got slapped across the face. It's the typical thing, but it was 100% true. And because the doctors had told me, "But you look at my children, they're me." And I wanted to be a mom, but I knew physically I would never ever be able to be one. So when she said that she was pregnant, it was a devastating thing to me. But I love children. They're delicious. No, I'm just kidding. But I love kids. I enjoy being around children. I just like kids. So I always wanted to be a parent. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I'd rather been a mom. I need those. What do you think of these?
Yeah, and I go tomorrow.
And me and Rachel had been buying clothing. I had 2 big boxes of clothing and stuff ready to start my transition, breasts. And Rachel had picked out a lot of the stuff with me. And I remember going up to my parents' house, and Rachel, I remember coming by the apartment, and we were living with her mom at the time. And I said, "I'm taking a trip up to my parents." And I remember her showing, and I took the clothing up there. And that was pretty much one of my deals was, okay, I'm just going to leave it there because I'm just going to leave it behind so I can start, becoming a father and dealing with it. I was not going to bring a child into this world without a father. I have really, there's some things that I have high morals on. Other things, I'll sleep with dirty guys. I'm just kidding. But I have high morals on that, okay, and I do. And so me and her discussed it. We were married in March of 1991. She was about 3, 4, 5 months pregnant. And August 18th of 1991, my first boy was born. My son Jeffery. He was a healthy boy, and he was the love of my life. He's my child, So life went on. I was a father that supported her. She was able to stay at home. I felt there were certain things that children need. They need their mother at home. I didn't want her working, so I worked a lot. I was a fucking incredible father, rotten husband, okay? Wouldn't sleep with her, but, you know, we were together and come home from work or whatever, you know, and once in a while I'd sleep with her, and boom, got her pregnant a second time. Okay, so here's Jeffrey and Bradley. We ended up moving to the San Fernando Valley. I was a contractor during the Northridge earthquake, so I was working 7 days a week, making a lot of money, supporting 2 children, a stay-at-home mother, and she started going back to school to become a dental assistant. And I wouldn't want to be with her. I wanted to transition more and more, but I'm still a father. And, you know, and I remember I was just wanting to dress. I was losing weight. I was going to a tanning salon. I wanted to do everything, let my hair grow out. And we ended up in separate bedrooms. And this is a house in the San Fernando Valley. And in about 1995, she filed for divorce. She took our 2 boys and moved to her mother's house and left us, right? So during this period, she left. I was all skinny. I was actually able to start dressing up, going out, going to nightclubs, and it was my first time at about 27, 28 years of age, being a girl, going to a nightclub, and being with men, okay? And it felt correct. And I had my kids every other day, and I adored my children to death. They were my life. But I went through this period, I was leading a double life, if that makes sense. On days that I didn't have my kids, I'm going to nightclubs. On days that I have my kids, I'm taking them to Chuck E. Cheese. I'm doing their homework, and we're having fun, all right? And I was a damn good father, really, really good father. And the year is now 1998. I'm going through this for some period, you know, so several years. 1998, and my oldest son here calls me and goes, hey Dad, you know, it's Christmas Eve, and he's at his mom's house, and he goes, hey Dad, we have no Christmas tree, right? And I'm like, so load up in my truck, I go to a Christmas tree a lot, Christmas Eve, and the guy's closing it down. I remember it very well. I pay $20 for a bitchin' tree, and I take it to their house, and the whole family decorates it for Christmas Eve, right? And so I spend the night, and I end up sleeping on the couch. And I remember their mother coming and grabbing me off the couch at about 11, 12 o'clock at night, and I go into the bedroom with her. And I spent a few days with her during that Christmas, and I slept with her, and boom, okay, there's my other 2 kids. There he is, that's Curtis, okay. And there's my youngest one. I'm gonna go back a little bit. Here's my son's. When me, Rachel, and Jeffrey and Bradley were young, and we moved here after the Northridge earthquake. And I planted that tree. Look how big it is. There used to be so much brush in here. God, I remember playing ball with my kids out here. It was so much fun.
What kind of soccer you mean?
Yeah, used to play soccer ball. I used to come home and ignore Rachel and just play with my boys and just play with them constantly out here. And used to sit and wait for me to Dad come home. Jeffrey would love to see this house. So many memories. It was huge. God, I wish I could go inside. And it just kind of bothers me. We had a $2,500 a month mortgage payment, and we just had to do it. So we did that, and 3 months into owning this home, with me working 7 days a week, I'm again now on the couch, she's in the master bedroom, no relationship. She says, fuck you, takes our youngest child, and moves back to her mother's house. Left me with the two older boys, right, Jeffrey and Bradley. Took our youngest boy, he was 3 years old at the time, and moved back to her mother's in Simi Valley. So here I am, having two not older boys, but raising them, and I think they were in 3rd and 5th grade, is my recollection is. And I start raising my children. And I buy the house out from her, and I file for custody. You do not split up brothers. That's my huge, honestly, belief. My two boys, we have the same parents. You don't split up the children. Brothers, my kids were constantly saying, we miss Curtis, we miss Curtis, we miss Curtis. So I filed for custody of all 3 children. She, in turn, kidnaps the 2 older children on a Friday, and we knew this was going to happen, and the judge gave them back to me on a Monday and started a 3-year huge legal battle, a giant custody battle. During this custody battle, she requested that the family have a full psychiatric evaluation done on the whole family. So they do several hours of interviews of all the children. They watch us interact with the children. They do the whole thing. Rachel goes into the evaluator's office and says, Jeff wants to be a girl. I've always known it. I've known before the day we were married. I've known when we started dating. He's always led a double life. He's a faggot. All he does is like men, the whole 9 yards. And this legal battle went on for 3 years. Finally, we ended up. So you can imagine I was on cloud 12,009. You know, I was so tickled pink. I had my children. I had, you know, the system went in my behalf. So here I was, a single father raising 3 boys, and I did it for a while, and I was doing pretty good. And then the economy started to tank. I owned a home in Simi Valley. My children, I had a cabinet shop. I was working 7 days a week. I was still an incredible father. I was there, took them to school. I walked them to school every day. I was an incredible father. But me wanting to become a girl was starting to raise her ugly head again. And like I said, I'm getting older, and things are starting to really manipulate in my head. I'm just going, I'm never going to do it. And I figured, can I do it with the children, the whole 9 yards? And it just became a really heavy period going, what do I do? And at this time, the economy is starting to turn sour. So me and their mother come over one day, and I remember we were sitting on the couch, and I told her that I want to transition. I told her I was very open with her, and I said, I want to fully go through the full sex change, and I want to become a girl. I want to be with a man, the whole 9 yards. And she said, we talked about this over several days, and she said, let me back into the household, and I will help you. I will help you transition. I will go to the doctors with you. I will help you. I will work with you. So I ended up losing that house due to the economy failing, and we moved to the Central Valley upon an agreement. We moved up to Tulare, a little place in Tulare. We in turn actually made arrangements to go to Trinidad, Colorado to meet Dr. Bowers, and to go to Scottsdale, Arizona to meet Toby Meltzer, the sex change doctors. And she had actually arranged to rent a car, had already pre-reserved hotel rooms, the whole 9 yards. This is how much she was behind it, and saying, I will do it. And as you do it, we made arrangements when Jeffrey graduates high school, and she graduates her medical school to become a hygienist, they will all move to Allen, Texas to be kind of close to her sister while I stay in California and transition, right? So the year is now 2009, and here I am in June 2009. That's my son's arm around me on his high school graduation. And it was a day or two after he graduated high school. We loaded the whole household of stuff into a truck, into a U-Haul, and they drive off to Texas. I stayed behind, and I planned on starting my transition. I went through a really heavy, dark time during this period. My kids were all gone. I was working 7 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, just constantly working. Stress was unbelievable. My kids, I would come home to an empty house. I had a mattress on the floor because they took all the furniture and prepared. And I went through a really, really dark period. And I came out to my little brother and I told him what I wanted to do. And I actually, one day, I attempted suicide. And I really lost it. I hadn't slept in about 4 days, non-sleep whatsoever. I was tired. I was crying for about 14 hours straight. And I swallowed a bottle of pills and attempted suicide. I spent about a full 10 days in a psychiatric hospital in Visalia. And while I was there, I met a psychiatrist and he said, you have to transition. What is better, a dad that is dead that looks like that, or a dad that is happy being his true gender? And he said, you have to do it. You honestly have to do it, Jeff. You have to go for it. So that's when I decided. I came out of there, moved to Santa Maria, stayed with my mom, and started my transition. I found a psychologist named Nancy Millico in Santa Maria, and we started planning my transition. In Christmas of that year, 2009, I flew to Texas, and I took my eldest son, Jeffery. We walked down the street to the park, and I told him, your dad is going to become a woman. Can you imagine telling your dad telling you that he's going to have a sex change and become a woman? I want to be with you. I support you. And he goes, I want to go to California with you. And I 100% support you. So I was just totally tickled pink. I left Texas, came back to California, and started planning my transition. I was already on hormones, and I wasn't living full time yet, but I was starting to plan. And while I was in Trinidad, Colorado, I called my middle son. It was not just one phone call. I had talked to him over several days, and I was hinting to him, and I said, you know what transgender is? Do you know what transsexual? And he did a little research on it. And I remembered this phone call very well, because I was on a bus going back to the airport. It was a snowstorm. And I remember telling him, he goes, what are you doing in Trinidad, Colorado? And I said, I'm meeting Dr. Bowers. I'm planning my sex change. And there was silence on the phone. And he comes back and he goes, you know what? I support you. I love you, Dad. You're going to be happier. I'm 100% behind you. Right? So that was 2 down. Now, law requires you live full time a year before you have a sex change. And so in Memorial Day, I started living full time. And I was a scary bitch. There's Jessica. I had a wig on. I didn't like going around dressing as a girl with a penis between my legs. I just did not feel comfortable. Even though I was scary, I did not feel comfortable. And I pushed Dr. Bowers. And they pushed my sex change up till September 17th of 2010, which happens to be my youngest son's birthday. So in September of 2010, I flew to Trinidad, Colorado, and Dr. Bowers did my trach shave. She cut off my Adam's apple, gave me my boobs, and turned my penis into a vagina. And I remember about 3 days later, after coming from the hospital to the morning after house, the doctor's assistant turned and gave me a letter and says, according to the United States government, you are now 100% female. To any doctor, to any standard. It was one of the most incredible days of my life. I mean, just seriously, to make it. You guys have really no idea. Then the next incredible day of my life is 6 weeks later, and a day is the first time I got laid as a and it felt good. First time I had penetration sex with a guy, and it worked, and I was tickled pink, and it felt real good. You know, I was happy. I wasn't nervous. I just could not wait for it to happen. I felt, and it was true, is once I had it done, I became whole. I am now legitimately a woman. I have made it, all right? And it's been a lifelong goal, dream, and I did it at 45 years old. And to be honest with you, it's better than I ever dreamed. It's more of an incredible feeling than you can ever imagine, is completing your transition. And I feel complete. I feel whole. I'm not scared to look in the mirror, except when I have a big zit. But I feel comfortable. I don't feel, when I was a man, I hated putting on my work boots. Hated having hair on my face. Absolutely hated having my hair cut. Hated going to, being a man and doing man things. I just hated it. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There was nothing I liked about it. And then now living life as my quote, true gender, it feels correct and is better than I ever anticipated. So what my goals, what my fantasies were, the outcome was a million times better than I ever thought it would be. Much, much happier.
That's amazing.
This is just time, new hair color and the whole 9 yards. Now it's blonde, and I like the blonde for the summer. What do you think? Blonde. So I'm happy. Life is going on good. Now, going back to 2012, my middle son had come out to see me several times. Bradley had come out, met Jessica. My eldest son is living with me in California. We're renting a condo out here in Grover Beach, me and Jeffrey together. He's working with me. I'm a contractor. Still working doing construction because it made a good money. And like I said, I spent a lot of money. And like I said, my son is living with me. My middle son, Brad, had come out and seen me several times, and it was a non-issue. It was hard for him when guys come and hit on me, but it is what it is, So the year is now 2012. My youngest son, we decided, originally we're not going to tell him yet. And texted her, I sent her emails, I sent her registered letters, I did everything to communicate with her. I said, the deal is, Curtis is now 12 years old, it's time we tell him. Every psychologist says it, it's time we tell him. And she wouldn't respond. And I really honestly had no idea what to do. And then lo and behold, I get a letter from the state of Texas in August of 2012. My son received the letter because it was dated, it was to Jeffrey Butterworth. My eldest son had my name, and he called me, he goes, you got a letter here from the state of Texas. And in there it says that the state of Texas is taking away my parental rights because what I did, because I had a sex change, was dangerous to my youngest boy's well-being. It was hugely, my choice of lifestyle was detrimental to my son's health, right? So, as you can imagine, I was freaking devastated. This is my youngest child. Now I'm not communicating with him, I'm not talking to him, and I don't know what to do. It is ordered that Dr. Ben Albritton is appointed to do a full-blown psychiatric evaluation. It must be done on or before January 31st, 2013. And in the rest of that order, it says, if you don't do this, you will go to jail. Okay? It was a court order. He also said you have all the access you want telephone to him. You can call him whenever you want. And he says, but if you get on the telephone and you tell him that you have had a sex change, I will personally come to California and personally throw you in jail. And put you in jail for a hell of a long time. That was his exact words. I will personally come to California and throw you in jail. So the judge says I can talk to my child and I have to have this evaluation. I walked out of that courthouse that afternoon, called this evaluator and started making arrangements. I said, I flew one way to Texas. Let's start the evaluation now. And it's nothing against political or anything like that, but his thesis in college was God will cure the homosexual population. This is who the judge said, this is going to tell you if you're ever going to see your child again, right? And this came from, like I said, from an attorney in the ACLU's office in New York. My attorney's it's a little bit late. She's already paid for it, the whole 9 yards. She's here, she's going to the evaluation, she can handle herself. So I go to my attorney, my attorney's Jessica, no matter what you do, don't talk about men. The judge, this is what they're so concerned with. Here in Texas, in Texas, they're so concerned about gay. And I said, I'm not gay, I am a woman, right? So I go to the evaluator's office. I walked in, and there's a high-rise Dallas building. You guys seen pictures of Dallas. You walk in, there's big old crown molding, several secretaries. You go into this one, there's a secretary over here's another secretary, several psychologists, and there's pictures of Jesus and crosses all over the wall. And I walk in, I'm going, I am so fucked right now, excuse the language. I just, this guy is going to nail me to the wall. Yeah, really, really is. So I went in there and I said, I'm just going to be very 100% truthful. I go into the first psychologist and he starts interviewing me. So Jessica, how old were you the first time you were attracted to a man? So Jessica, how old were you the first time you ever slept with a guy? What kind of sex do you have? The whole 9 yards, they were so concerned about what I do and how I have sex. And it was mind-boggling, right? 2 days of intense questioning, MMPIs, all these huge amount of questioning. An MMPI is a 600-word testing thing, and I don't know if you guys ever had it. It's a full psychiatric evaluation, 2 days of intense questioning. And he says to me, he goes, this evaluation is going to take some time. I need names of 10 to 15 people that I can interview and learn a little bit about you. So I pulled out my phone and said, there's 15 names and half of them are couples, and you can take anybody off this phone. That's basically how open I was. And he says, okay, this guy will get back to you. And I talked to him on Christmas Day, and it was, thanks for the computer, Dad. Thanks for that, Dad. I got to go, Dad. Bye, Dad. And that was my conversation with him. Then from then on, every time I called him, you would hear her saying, you don't want to talk to him. And Dad, I can't talk to you. Click. And that was the last of the phone conversations. So from there on, my evaluation is going on. Again, he said it has to be done by January 31st. And it's now at the end of January 27th, 28th, and I'm going, hey, I'm calling my attorney saying, where is this evaluation? I paid for it. He's interviewed everybody. Where is it? And so my attorney says, leave it alone, Jessica. He knows. He knows when it's due in the whole 9 yards. And I said, you know what? You're not a parent. You have no idea. So I call the evaluator's office, and his secretary is like, I'll get back to you. The next day she calls me, and she goes, hey, Jessica, the evaluation is done. I'm all cool, let's do it. And she goes, but it took a little bit longer. She goes, it's another $1,500. I'm like, seriously? I call my attorney, he's all like, that's blackmail. I go, what is it? Can you tell me what the results are? And she goes, nope, I can't tell you. It's the judge's order. He owns it. Even though you paid for it, he owns it. So the next day I wire them the $1,500. And that evening, I'm in the shower, and my phone rings, and it's my lawyer saying, Jessica, you did it. You actually beat it. Here's the evaluation. Look at the date on it, January 31st. He waited until the very, very last day. I should start seeing my son with reunification through a psychologist. Their own evaluator said I should start seeing my son immediately. It's a 22-page document, and in there it says I am the better parent. All right, I had beaten the system. I was fucking elated. I was so happy. I was elated. I was mind-boggling. So my attorney calls me, goes, Jessica, they are fighting the evaluation. They are saying it is biased. And in Texas law, they have the right to fight it. And he goes, it's going to cost you $100,000 to ever speak to your child again. And he goes, I want another $10,000 retainer. You can imagine how freaking devastated I was, how floored I was. I prepared days upon days. Me and my eldest son flew to Texas in the very end of June of 2013, flew to Texas and said, let me, we go into the courthouse and said, let me see my child. You have this evaluation, and the judge would not let one word of this evaluation into the courthouse. It was his order that I have this done. You saw the documentation, but it went on my behalf, and he would not allow one word of this whole documentation, even though I had to pay for it, flew to Texas, the whole 9 yards. Wouldn't allow that. They said her attorney puts me on the stand and says, do you have any communication between you and your son? I pulled out a whole stack of T-Mobile phone records with everything highlighted, and they said they would not allow it. They said, do you have anything? It would show me, did you give your wife money? Did you give her, here's check stubs. They would not allow it. He said, do you have letters for you and your son? I said, here's letters from my son. They said, there's no proof that that's his handwriting. They would only allow the stamp on the letter as evidence. They would not allow anything. They said, did you have proof that you sent your son Christmas cards? And I said, no. How do you prove that? And they said, did you send your son registered Christmas cards? That's what her attorney physically asked me in the courthouse. Did you send your son registered birthday cards and Christmas cards? I mean, when was the last time you sent anybody a registered birthday card? It's just non-issue. So we ended up in that court. We sat there and just said, you know what, Judge, let me see my child. We flew one way. You know, you have this, wouldn't allow it. I want to see my child. We've jumped through every hoop with flying colors. I am a good person. And the judge says, go home to California, and I will email you my results, my answers. This is too difficult. I am deciding on a parent losing a parental rights. So I flew back to California, and I waited all week. That was a Monday court case. One of these days, there's 15 of you in here. One of these days, one of you guys, two of you guys are going to have a child, a sister, a brother, an uncle that's going to say, hey, I want to be a boy or I want to be a girl. Your mom or dad may come out to you just like I did to my children. And you're going to remember that's what it is. It's not a choice. It's not one day you just wake up and say, you know what? I want to be a girl, or I want to be a boy, or, you know, you're born this way. Some of you have blue eyes, some of you have black eyes, some of you have dark eyes, some of us are blonde hair, some of us are dark skinned. We're all different, you know. We just happen to be a little bit different-er, you know. But we're all human. We're all the same deep down inside. We're all living, breathing. And, you know, we just need to accept each other. And that's basically my story. And if you have any questions, feel free. I will answer anything. I mean, anything. Did I bore you guys? A little bit?
Yeah, we got a few of us. Anyone show up right here? Yeah, I was like, I couldn't remember exactly what you were doing.
Young adults have different questions about sex and relationships than our 12-year-olds do. So.
Was it Puritans?
I'm like, that's good. Wait, where are what is this space?
Let's do some news. I think every transgender person, everyone, they thinks that they put on a dress and they put on heels and whatever and they look beautiful. And I didn't. You see in my pictures, right? But I felt comfortable. And so when I wanted to transition, I knew it was going to take some time. I wanted to be drop dead gorgeous. I had this fantasy of having long flowing hair, you know, beautiful, and just be able to wear, you know, absolutely gorgeous clothes. And I've reached a lot of them.
Just a little bit of move forward. Back, yeah.
Let me lie down in the front. Is a lot of people ask me this during when I'm in a lecture, and I say, go for it. Don't let anybody in the world tell you you can't. And it goes for just the general population on anything. Don't let anybody in the world tell you that you can't do anything that you want. You're not going to go murder somebody, but if you wanted to be the very best athlete, you can be the very best athlete. You got to work at it. If you want to go and become a girl, or if you want to become a boy, go for it. Don't let anybody tell you you cannot do it. You have to go for it, and do it as young as you can, and go for it, and just go balls out as hard, as fast as you can, and don't let anybody get in your way, you know. And of course you got mom and dad to deal with, but you know, I mean, but go for it. That's my very, very 3 words. Go for it.
Is there anything else you want to say though? Just about yourself or life or?
I am totally, totally happy now. I am correct in my body. And I want my son to know, especially my youngest son, Curtis, that I love him to death. And sooner or later, I will see him. And he'll be very, very proud of me, you know.